Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2675 of The Tom Woods Show, and I'm very glad to have our old friend Murray Sabrin back on the show. I just saw Murray last week at the Mises Institute, where he participated in a debate with Spencer Morrison on the subject of tariffs and protectionism, and he was sporting or had brought with him a hat that got my attention, and the acronym on the hat made me think, well, we should probably talk about what Murray's up to these days on the Tom Woods Show, because it really does matter quite a bit. First of all, Murray, welcome back.
Well, it's great to see you today, and great to see you last week. We were able to commiserate during dinner wearing our pink shirts, and in line with that, I've got another pink shirt to wear today.
Well, I posted a picture of Murray and me on Facebook having dinner, and that's when I realized we were wearing exactly the same thing. But anyway, so you had this hat that said on it MAFI, which is Make America Financially Independent. And the thing is, and I know you already thought about this, but what gives Make America Great Again, what heft it has is the again in it, So I was thinking you need to have an again, Make America Financially Independent again, but then that spells mafia, and you were wondering, well, I don't know, your wife was a little concerned, would people want to be that edgy? But I'll tell you something, Murray, a red hat with white stitching that says mafia, I think people would buy that. I think people would hop on board.
Just a quick correction, it's Make Americans Financially Independent.
Americans, individual Americans, indeed.
This is the difference between Trump, Make America Great Again. Bernie Sanders could say the same thing. What made America great? It was the New Deal. It was the Great Society. It was all these government spending. That's what made America great. So let's use the Misesian libertarian approach that it's individualism that made America great. It was people working together in their local communities. All the great entrepreneurs from day one of America to today, they're the ones that built America. It wasn't the politicians. The politicians got in the way.
Well, fair enough. So now you were I apologize, I gave you a terrible introduction. I didn't give you any introduction at all. Murray was a professor of finance at Ramapo College for 35 years. He's been a benefactor, indeed, even in a financial sense, of the liberty movement. We're grateful to him for that. And he has a Substack, murraysabrin.substack.com. So he stays active, does a lot of writing and speaking and media appearances and so on. So I want to now, given that you have this slogan, I want to go back to your days as a finance professor and ask, first of all, I wonder what kind of courses you taught, but also, is the stuff you taught in those courses, at least some of it, valuable for individuals as they try to navigate an inflationary environment?
That's a great question. Thanks, Tom. The first course I taught in the finance program, which all business students had to take as part of their requirement, was Corporate Finance 1, which is just the basic stuff about finance: income statements, balance sheets, interest rates, some capital formation concepts. And students loved the course because it just gave them some basic tools they need to go into the business world and make sense of what's going on in a business. The next course I taught was Securities Investments. Again, an introductory course to all the asset classes that are out there, how to evaluate companies, bonds, and things like that. And then my favorite course, and I think you would appreciate this, was the Financial History of the United States, where I used much of the material from the Mises Institute. I used your wonderful video about the 1920s. Students loved it. They didn't understand that Calvin Coolidge was a real great president in terms of not wanting to intervene in the economy. And between Rothbard's material, Palm de Lorenzo, Larry Reed from the Foundation for Economic Education, students' eyes were opened up to how the American financial system evolved, how government intervention caused the business cycle, going back to the beginning of the Republic. We went through Rothbard's Panic of 1819, David Stockman's The Great Deformation. Students really got a chance to see what they didn't see in any other course, namely that the business community thrives when there's economic freedom, when there's financial stability. And then there are challenges with the business cycle. And students just complimented me constantly about what they learned and how they thought it was going to help them in their business career once they graduate from college.
So but I'm thinking about like a consumer, people like Elizabeth Warren are very concerned about consumer education, that the consumers be educated about, for example, the implications of their mortgage loan, like what's involved in the payment schedule and everything. And she's inclined to think that the banks and other institutions are always looking to mislead Americans. So when she thinks about educating Americans on finance, it's always with this backdrop of capitalism's evil and institutions are evil and they're trying to trick you in some way. But I'm thinking more about the kinds of education of the consumer that nobody's going to get from any government agency or from school, which would be things about anything from establishing a family budget to tracking your spending to, indeed, if you do take out a mortgage, thinking about what your options are, and then indeed what to do with money that I have left over that I could, if I want to, put it in the bank and watch it lose a third of its value over the next 20 years, even if the Fed keeps inflation, quote unquote, low. I'm talking about those kinds of things. Like what can finance concepts teach the average American to help to put him in a better position vis-a-vis his own money?
That is a great question. One of my favorite chapters in Corporate Finance 1, and I repeated this in Securities Investors. Chapter 4 in the textbook we used for Corporate Finance 1 was the time value of money. Warren Buffett said this is the eighth wonder of the world. And we went through this whole concept of investing early, where your parents can establish a savings account for you or an investment account when you're born, and what that money grows to when you turn 65. Over 65 years of compounding, even if you start with a small amount, in 65 years, and you add money to that account, like a super 401k account or super IRA account, you could have multi-millions of dollars in your retirement account where Social Security would be an irrelevant part of your retirement. And so we went through that chapter and shows students that even if your parents didn't do that for you, you could start saving after you graduate at age 21, 22. And even at age 65, 70, you still have 45, 50 years of saving. That's why a 401k and IRA is probably one of the best tools we have to show students that they can have a secure retirement. And the key word, Tom, is discipline. You have to budget, as you pointed out. You have to spend less than you take in. Again, basic cash flow. You spend less than you take in, and you set aside money for retirement, an emergency fund, charitable contributions, and enjoy the things in life. And this is where it becomes dicey in an economy where you have a business cycle where the Federal Reserve is manipulating interest rates and causes these downdrafts in the stock market of 30, 40, 50%. And then people say the sky is falling. But one of the charts that I used in the course, and I think Austrian economists would appreciate it, is a long-term chart of the stock market going back to the 1920s. And what you notice is that the chart over 70, 80, 90 years always goes up. That's not the time horizon of the average person, but it just shows you that dollar cost averaging, putting money away with every paycheck every month, you will compound that money. The stock market returns roughly 9% a year over 50, 60, 70 years, even with all the downdrafts that we have. And we know the rule of 72, if your return is 9% a year, it takes 8 years for your money to double. So if you do that several times over a lifetime, I showed students how they could put away a modest amount and have a couple $1 million in their retirement account when they retire. There is nothing better than saving for the future. I learned that at a young age. I saw my parents do it. They didn't make a lot of money. And I realized that if I was going to have a decent retirement, which I'm in right now, I was able to save a substantial portion of my income in a 401k. It was called 403B for college professors. And I have a very secure retirement. So I would urge all your listeners, sit down, see what your income is, see what your expenses are, put away. And the rule of thumb is, and this is what I did as an investment manager back in the early 80s, you should put away a minimum of 10% in your retirement account, whether it's a 401k, and let that money compound, and you will never regret it. in your lifetime.
Related to this, can you say something about these Trump baby bonds or these Trump accounts that involve $1,000 being given? And it looks like it's not means tested, given to any baby born between 2025 and the end of 2028. What does that amount to, and why would you be against that if you just said, we need more saving and this and that?
Well, the problem is, Tom, it's government, it's tax dollars that are going into people's accounts. The federal government's running a $2 trillion deficit, so all that money has to be borrowed in order for it to make that program viable. And so when I taught this to students over the course of 35 years, I said, if families got together with friends and put $1,000 each year in a child's account for 10 years, and if you have 50 friends, they could put $20 toward a child's account, a nice birthday gift, and that child would have an enormous amount of money at 18 and a super amount of money at age 65. So again, here's an example where Trump has a good idea, but he's implementing it poorly. It should be done by private individuals. Companies can match that account. And it just shows you how embedded this welfare state is in our society, where even business people were lauding this as a great thing that the government's now getting involved in helping young people save. And it just shows you that the welfare state, once it gets established, grows and grows and grows. And even smart business people, you hear them on TV saying what a great thing this is for the American family, when it should be done by voluntary contributions.
I'm looking at an article about this now. So it would be $1,000 in an account, and it says you can deposit over time a maximum, in any given year, a maximum of $5,000 can be contributed to the accounts. But what is the government doing with the money? Is it putting it in the stock market, or what's it doing?
No, the family controls it, and I think they will invest in an S&P index fund.
Okay,
and we know 9% a year over the course of history shows you that money compounds over 30, 40 years. I think the goal of this account is to have money available for students to go to college at 18. So over 18 years, and you put money away up to $5,000 a year, you could have a substantial amount of money by the time the child graduates from high school. But more importantly, I think it sets the tone. Saving is something that is a virtue. Instead of having this notion that you got to spend in order to enjoy your life all the time. And there's a time for saving, there's a time for spending. But the saving virtue, the saving concept is so important for young people to embrace, because it puts them on a track for not overspending. And that's one of the problems we have today. Here's a scary statistic, Tom. 3 out of 5 Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
I hear you. Well, I'm looking at another thing that says after 20 years, the compounding from 1,000, if you add nothing to the account, it just stays the original 1,000. It compounds to 8,000, but then after 40 years, it's 69,000, and after 60 years, it's 574,000. I mean, okay, well, obviously we know that compound interest, the way it works is that as time goes on, the compounding gets more and more dramatic. At the very beginning, it's kind of ho-hum, and then all of a sudden, it's incredible where it goes. I have a funny feeling I could manage that 1,000 so that it would get up to way more than 8,000 after 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, this is the thing about 401k. You put money in every year, or an IRA. And the thing is, there should be no limit on how much you can put away. Not right now, we have limits on it. And this is an example of government trying to micromanage people's savings or lives, for that matter. And if we just allow people to save according to what their preferences are, every child in America, by the time they're 65, could have a multi-million-dollar retirement account.
Hey everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you're getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you're a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. What if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking? Use your website as a lead generation engine. What if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO Expert Search Engine Optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. Okay, so it does say invested in a broad equity index fund. So it's not like it's sitting in a Schwab account and I can just do what I want with it.
No, I think they have a severe restriction that it should be in an S&P index fund, which is fine. Because
I mean, it's a lot worse you could do, and most people who have their own funds and they promise you that they're going to make you X dollars, the question that trips them up is, do you outperform an index fund? And they usually want to run the other way because almost none of them do.
Right.
My friend Larry Lepard does do better than the index funds, but that's because he's a freak of nature.
Well, the thing is, there's some very talented money managers out there, and Warren Buffett was one of them for 60 years since he headed up Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire stock is compounded 20% a year for 60 years. So if you run the numbers, the stock, I remember seeing it $40 back in the 1970s, and now it's over $700,000. So people who bought when Buffett took over Berkshire in 1965, when it was $11 a share, their stock has gone up more than 60,000 times in 60 years. Incredible performance.
Yeah, that is incredible performance. Let's talk about something that came up briefly in your debate. In the 1980s, it was popular, started to be popular really around the world, to propose that governments pursue something called industrial policy, whereby I guess the argument was when there are industries with great promise, what would be the downside to having government take some of its tax revenue and throw it at these industries to help them grow and accelerate their growth? And that way, your country can maybe economically outperform other countries because your country had the foresight to invest all this money in various industries. And that has been making a comeback, as you know, in recent years, and even in the United States. And the argument most recently has been that in principle, free market fundamentalism sounds like the way to go, but in practice, countries that have abandoned it and have pursued industrial policy have had good success with it. So how do you respond to that?
Well, the way I respond is that it's not the purview of the government to invest in companies because it's not their dollars, it's taxpayer dollars. And so we've had examples over and over again. For example, let me give you a good historical example. The DeLorean car in 1981, the Irish government, I think, made a loan to DeLorean to build a factory in Ireland, $150 million. I remember reading the article in the Wall Street Journal, and I was working up in Massachusetts for the American Institute for Economic Research, and I said, this is not going to fly. Because the point is, if you ever watch Shark Tank, which are pretty savvy people, you have to, if you are a new startup, or it's redundant, if you're a startup, or you have a great idea, you have to demonstrate that you have efficacy and that you will succeed in the marketplace. No one knows for sure if you will. But the point is, risking taxpayer dollars for the possibility of a company being successful in the marketplace is kind of iffy. It's not their money. It's not the bureaucrats. It's not the president's money to invest. This is why we have capital markets. This is the division of labor in the financial area. We have the stock market, we have the bond market, we have private equity, we have all sorts of markets which individuals and companies can tap in order to pursue their goals. We don't need the government involved in that because this is another example of the seen and the unseen that Bastiat and Hazlitt wrote about. Is you see the benefits going to some companies, but on the other hand, there is a lack of capital for other companies that have to struggle to get capital. So it's not a win-win situation, maybe a win for the companies that are tapped into the political elites in the country, but let the market decide this. And this is a simple concept of free enterprise at work, a laissez-faire economy. And as I pointed out in my debate, this is the engine of economic growth. you can get some benefits if company puts money into an already established company that is doing well. But why do that? What's the point of it? If a company is doing well, why does it need more government dollars coming in? And the government can't pick winners and losers. We saw this with the solar companies under Obama. We're seeing to some degree with the chip companies. Intel got a lot of money. Their stock is in the dumps. I think it's down in real terms like 80, 90% from 20, 30 years ago. So again, the capital markets really sort out the winners from the losers.
And of course, the argument you made at the debate is as you repeated at the beginning of this just now, people who are investing their own money tend to be a little bit more reliable than politicians who aren't investing other people's money. If politicians were that good at it, they would be doing it themselves in their private lives. They wouldn't have run for office if they knew how to pick which were the up and coming industries that needed infusions of cash and so on. So we do have that. And in general, as you say, the private markets are better allocators of resources, but they could say that maybe some industries, the profit isn't going to come for many years, and investors have very short time horizons. And so maybe that's why we need government involvement to kickstart it. But then the answer to that, I think, would be governments have pretty short time horizons, namely 2 years until the next election.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, this is why when you study financial history, Murray Rothbard talked about this, Tom DiLorenzo, the president of Mises, talked about this. Every time the government subsidized the railroads and the canals in the 19th century, they all collapsed. I mean, we have example after example of government involvement in the banking sector as well. And so when you look at financial history and you look at sound risk management, this is the key word, risk management. Who's going to take on the risk? If the government loses money, that means the taxpayers are on the hook for it. If individuals lose money, it's only their money that they're risking. It's not their neighbor's money, it's their money. So again, this is why the market is the best allocator of resources that the human beings have devised. And I think we should just continue with that and just get the government out of the economy as much as possible and as quickly as possible.
Let's talk a little bit more about tariffs because of your debate. One thing that didn't come up so much is the issue that we've heard, or let's say the line of argument that we've heard more and more these days, which is that some people will say, in principle, I understand the arguments against tariffs, but in practice, there are countries that have taken both tariff and non-tariff measures to let's say undermine American companies in their markets or make it difficult for them to penetrate. And if the president plays hardball with them, he can generate trade agreements that in practice wind up with a better outcome for everybody than we would have had without them, that even a libertarian might prefer to the status quo. Now, just over the weekend, we heard that Trump had reached an agreement with the EU, for example. What's been your impression with these various trade agreements or this line of argument in general?
Well, the argument is based upon a very simple premise that the trade deficit is bad, that trade has to be balanced. This is an absurd concept because nations don't trade, individuals and businesses trade. As I pointed out to the debate, we all run trade deficits. Last year, my wife and I ran a huge trade deficit with the independent living facility that we're in and all the vendors that we purchased merchandise from. That's on our charge costs. It's over 6 figures of a trade deficit with other businesses. So we have income. We use that income for our preferences, and there's no problem. I didn't lose any sleep. The vendors were happy. And so that's the way a free market economy works. What the protectionists and the high tariff people think is that somehow trade has to be balanced. Where that notion comes from, I scratch my head on it. I have to probably consult some great economic historian. Where does this notion come from? Because let's say countries impose draconian measures or not so draconian measures on U.S. companies. Well, those companies should then lobby those countries to lower those barriers. The federal government, I don't believe, is the ombudsman of the private sector. The federal government is not the Chamber of Commerce. The problem with Trump is he thinks he's the CEO of America Inc., and he has to do all these trade deals to make it better for American companies, when American companies are constantly lobbying Washington to make things better for them or get some crony deal. Well, they can spend some of that lobbying money in Paris and in the EU and in Tokyo and Korea and so on and so forth, England, in order to get, quote, better trade deals for their companies. So again, here's an example of a statist view of the world, a collectivist view of the world, a nationalistic view of the world, as opposed to an individualist, free market, entrepreneurial world. And I think that's the difference between sort of the right-wing conservatives that want high tariffs for American businesses, where those of us that want a free market globally. And as I point out, the best deal that Trump could make for American business is to get rid of the corporate income tax. We would become a magnet to every company in the world. Businesses would flock to America, not having to pay an income tax on their profits here. They would set up shop over the next 5 years. The United States would have probably a close to a 0% unemployment rate, and we would have the biggest boom in American history.
And you could do that without having to add any additional layers of government involvement. All you would be doing is removing a layer. That's the benefit of that.
And the way you message this to the left, because they would say this is a terrible giveaway to corporations, you say this is going to increase employment so everyone in America who wants a job can get a job, whether it's an entry-level job or a high-paying, high-tech job, because companies from Europe and Asia, probably even South America, would come to America, not having to pay a corporate income tax. That would be the greatest benefit to American business, as opposed to all these crazy deals that he's coming on. And this is Trump's view of the world, that he's a negotiator, he's a deal maker. No, the best deals there are in the free market, and cut taxes and cut the regulations. He can go down to the competitive enterprise in DC, which has done great work over many decades, showing him which regulations should be abolished. And I think between deregulation and lower taxes, and of course the Fed not manipulating interest rates, and the government cutting back on unnecessary spending, which is most of it.
Let's go back to the acronym Make Americans Financially Independent. I got us off on a tangent on that almost immediately, so I should return to that in all fairness to you. What does that mean to you?
This is why I wrote an open letter to Bill Gates on my Substack a couple months ago, and wrote that article for the Mises Institute toward financial independence and a constitutional federal budget. If we had a constitutional federal budget, Tom, Americans would be financially independent because there would be no Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, aid to education. In other words, we would be the individual, the family, and the community would be dealing with these issues that the federal government is not required to deal with these mega programs. Unfortunately, the federal government has bought off the seniors with Medicare and Social Security, with low-income people with Medicaid and housing subsidies and food stamps. And of course, you have corporate welfare, you have farm aid, you have dollars going to virtually every sector in the economy. And to me, financial independence means you study, like my parents taught me when we moved to the Bronx in 1953, study, get an education, and become a professional. And I decided to become an educator, taught in the New York City schools, and learned the virtue of saving, because the notion, Tom, of living paycheck to paycheck is such a sad concept. And here's the really sad concept, Tom. 30% of people on Social Security only have Social Security as their income. What Social Security says right on the website, Social Security is one leg of a three-legged stool. You should have your pension, which we don't have anymore, which is replaced by a 401k, and your personal savings and Social Security. Financial independence to me means that you have enough income to take care of yourself, your family, you're philanthropic, and therefore you enjoy the best of everything. You're not dependent upon the federal government or your state government or your local government for your sustenance. And that, to me, is what it means to be a human being, is that everyone is working in a job, has a small business, works in a big corporation, and enjoys what life has to offer us in the United States, which is a lot.
Hey, everybody, this isn't a sponsor message. It's an announcement that I have 11 awesome free things to give you that you're going to love, and not one of them is an ebook. For instance, my public speaking secrets that come from my 30-year career. Or Dr. Miriam Grossman on how to inoculate your kids against gender ideology. My 10-lesson middle school course on the foundations of liberty. It isn't available for sale anywhere. But if you want it, it's on the freebies page that I'm telling you about now. Here's one you'll like, a simple way to generate $50 per month in perpetuity without work. Now, I'm wording it that way specifically to annoy people who refuse to believe anything. Woods, there's no such thing, they'll say. Oh, but there absolutely is. I earn 3 times that much with it, and I am not joking. Or how about this? Chances are you're right like a dork. I hate to break it to you, but since 90% of the public does, that likely includes you. I'll help you stop, which means you'll stand out in whatever you do. Or how about a case study in which one of my friends, who built a 7-figure recipe website, shares how she did it? There are more, 11 in total. To get them, all you have to do is say maybe to my awesome School of Life program that everyone raves about. Give it a spin for 30 days for $1, and you can have the 11 freebies in perpetuity. Get them now at 11freebies.com. A lot of the younger folks these days, and that's how you know you're getting older, is when you start talking about the younger folks, but they feel like the system is rigged against them. They feel like the housing prices are too high, prices in general are too high. They have to work an inordinate amount of time. They're overwhelmed with college debt. They can never seem to get out from under both that and the homeowner expectation, which involves a 20% down payment on an inflated house price. It's hard to blame them when they feel like the system just doesn't work. But I think they draw the wrong conclusion from this.
There's no question about it. I'll give you what we're seeing right now in real time, Tom, is the hypocrisy of Washington, D.C. on both sides of the aisle. Trump, when Mamdani won the Democratic mayoralty primary in New York City, he said this guy's a communist, he's a Marxist, he's a socialist. So what does Trump do? He establishes a sovereign wealth fund. So socialism is bad for New York City, but it's great for America as long as Trump is the president of the United States. This shows you how confusing it is for the average person. Socialism is bad for New York City, but it's great for the country with this sovereign wealth fund. The Pentagon is taking a big stake in a materials company. It was written up on CNBC's website the other day, and it's in the newspapers all the time. This is where your head explodes when you see the gross inconsistency and contradiction of the president of the United States, no matter who it is, and the notion that freedom is our birthright, and yet they're squandering it with this top-down approach to the economy. And young people, it's the Fed inflating everything. Healthcare is grossly distorted because of third-party insurance and Medicare and Medicaid. And so we have the confluence of big government that has evolved for more than 100 years now, and it's caused these distortions in every sector of the economy. And the beauty of America is, and this is the word that's been used now in this tariff debate, is the resiliency of American business, given that everything that's thrown at them, manipulated interest rates, high taxes, regulations, and now tariffs, and all the other regulations that are out there. So you got to give Trump credit for trying to get rid of as many regulations as possible, reducing spending by getting rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse. But the big issues, Tom, no one wants to touch, which is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And I wrote a very long article that'll be published in a book soon on financial independence and a constitutional budget. The Mises article is sort of a synopsis of the longer article. And I say, hey, we have an opportunity to take the ideas that the founders presented to the American people of individual freedom, free enterprise, free trade, and create a society based upon those principles that would create more opportunity than what they're trying to do today.
The thing is, you have to phrase this the right way. Like,
Yep.
if especially in this day and age, if you're going to this generation that feels, a lot of them are feeling despair, and you say, well, I have better principles, and the founding fathers 250 years ago thought X and Y, they're going to look at you like you have two heads. Like, this doesn't sound like it has any application to me at all. So I think we have to explain, how does this help? Who's hurting you? Where is this pain coming from? It's not like housing prices like this are just a brute fact of nature that just occur, and there's nothing we can do about it except, some authoritarian measure. There are causes for these things, and there are bad guys and bad institutions that are responsible. I think that works better than appeals to abstract principles that just don't mean anything to them. I mean, I think that's why that guy, that semi-commie guy in New York, won the Democratic primary, is because you can't beat something with nothing.
Right.
And the Republicans are trying to beat something with nothing. And at least he's got something. It's a terrible something. But if all the Republicans are going to say is slogans from 1987, then the left is going to win every time.
Well, that's why I wrote this open letter to Bill Gates, because Warren Buffett, Michael Bloomberg, who are super wealthy, literally can help phase out or replace Medicaid with nonprofit medical centers. I helped create one in New Jersey. I still support that one and the two others where I know the founders. There's one here in Naples, Tom. It's called the Neighborhood Health Clinic. It was founded by a doctor and his wife 26 years ago. They have not taken a penny of taxpayer dollars. Every dollar has been raised through philanthropy, and they're expanding. They're building a new building for pathological testing. They have dental services. They have a pharmacy. I was just there a couple of months ago. It is a magnificent example of people at the local level getting together to solve a problem. And we can replicate this all over the country. And in that article, I linked to the umbrella organization that helps people at the local level create these institutions. I believe there's one in your neck of the woods in the Orlando area. They're all over Florida. They're mainly, interesting enough, in the southern states, not too many in the northern states. But in the southern states, I think there's a culture of caring and giving that is second to none. And it would probably take 10,000 of these across the country over the next 5 to 10 years to eliminate the $900 billion Medicaid budget. What a great legacy for Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Michael Bloomberg, and the other super wealthy people in America, plus small contributions from the average families who can give $50, $100, and they can establish these centers, and we can start the ball rolling of how you have better outcomes at lower cost for the American people to achieve something great for their fellow citizens.
You've written a couple of books on the healthcare problem. What are they?
Yeah. It's one is from conception to end of life. The case for a single-payer system. The single-payer system being the doctor-patient relationship. The single-payer being the individual, not the government. And the other one is the finance of healthcare. And again, we can solve the healthcare issue so simply is by getting rid. Here's the problem. Let me back up. The problem, as I see it in America, is we're overinsured, overmedicated, and undernourished. That's why we have a 40% plus obesity problem among adults. That's going to 50% by 2030. We have rampant diabetes in this country, heart disease, cancer, all the chronic ailments that come about through bad eating that RFK Jr. talks about as HHS secretary. And again, nutrition is really one of the keys to better health. And I learned this many years ago, and I've been trying to follow the protocols that I've learned over the years. And there are naturopaths that have different protocols than traditional medicine. And if we get rid of insurance, we've got rid of insurance for day-to-day visits to the doctor. That's not the purpose of insurance, as we all know. It's for the big stuff. And as we all know about the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, you can get an operation at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma at 50 to 75% less than what hospital charges, and you won't need medical insurance to do that. And so, again, we have everything in place to transition from this top-down approach of employer-based insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, to the doctor-patient relationship being secured with out-of-pocket payments and possibly catastrophic insurance for the big things that are out there. But even those are being addressed through non-traditional protocols. With cancer, there are people who are doing incredible research with ivermectin and other protocols that are off the shelf or non-authorized, if you will. And there are people who are doing research in other areas where you don't need the heavy-duty chemotherapy and so on and so forth. So I'm optimistic that this information will eventually get out to the public. And if the Trump administration and RFK Jr. really push this notion that the doctor-patient relationship is the key, and we should think about alternatives to traditional medicine, because given that we have traditional medicine, why do we have so many sick people in America today?
Well, that reminds me of one of the problems is that we're so focused on how are we going to fund medical care for people, when the problem is, even if we do somehow solve this problem where we know that Medicare is has all these terrible unfunded liabilities and the number is astronomical, but the point is that that's all still a medical system that a lot of us have lost trust in, that I used to trust because why wouldn't I? But over the past 5 years, I now realize that it's just a lot of it is just symptom management, and a lot of it is doctors bluffing about things they don't fully understand, and yet we hold them in almost a superstitious reverence because they wear white coats and have a stethoscope around their neck. So it's not even so just getting to the question of funding it and providing medical care for the poor is like still just nibbling at the edges. The issue is the care itself is fundamentally flawed. Like there's a problem with the whole thing. So there are a lot of conversations we need to be having, and thankfully we are having them. I will say that from my own care, since I don't have an employer, my employer is myself, we use a direct primary care office. So it's just we pay. My wife takes care of it. I don't know what the monthly fee is, but it's very reasonable. And for that monthly fee, we get everything. We get we can see him in person. We can text him anytime. We get telehealth. We get even minor procedures like if we need stitches or anything like that. All this stuff can be done as part of the membership. And that's because he doesn't have to worry about insurance. He doesn't have to worry about the government. You get a glimpse into what free market medicine would look like. And if more people knew about it, I think they would choose it.
Yeah, I think doctors are getting burnt out. From what I know, speaking to doctors, they're retiring at 65 when they could be working to 75 or 80. And we need more direct primary care doctors, because the beauty of a direct primary care office is they usually have around 800 patients max, while a traditional doctor has about 2,000 patients, and you have a 10-minute visit. And for a direct primary care doctor, and I interviewed two of them for my book on healthcare, and they can sit with the patient for a half hour, 40 minutes, and really get to know the patient, know what makes them tick and what bothers them. And if you work with a naturopath, and I have a good friend who's a naturopath, he just came out with a new book on healthcare, and I would urge you to have him on his show because he really knows this stuff. He really knows medicine. He lectures at medical schools, and doctors shadow him in his office. So there are people out there, and we need more naturopaths. We need more physicians that are looking at a holistic approach to medical care, health care. And I think we would have a much healthier population. Right now, you look at the numbers, and driving home, let me just say, driving home from the Mises Institute to Florida the other day, we stopped at one of the rest stops, and there was a young couple there. And my heart went out to them because together they probably weighed about 700 pounds. I mean, this was a very big male and a very large female. And I'm saying, what type of health are they in? Because they were really overweight. And that is the extreme. This is morbid obesity we're talking about. So the point is, you've got to be in charge of your health care and the food supply that we have. And we know that with the processed foods, with the seed oils and all the other things that go into our food supply, that is causing people's health care to be worse than it otherwise would be. And so we need to clean up the food supply, and we need to have more clean eating. And we need to stop addressing every health issue with a prescription. And that's one of the problems we're facing in America today, is that doctors are very prone to write prescriptions rather than saying, what are the alternatives to these ailments that people are facing?
Well, the link to Murray's Substack is murraysabrin.substack.com. So check out what Murray has to say. He's quite prolific. You'll definitely find something interesting on that list. So Murray, thanks so much for your time today.
Great to be with you, Tom. And remember, make Americans financially independent is the future of the country if we're going to have a country that's going to be prosperous and free and peaceful.
Well, I'm going to buy my MAFI hat, and then I'm going to pencil in an A at the end, Murray, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Can I show you what it looks like?
Why not?
This is what it looks like.
Okay.
And let people know that Mises Institute will carry it in August. They'll be carrying it.
I love having a hat with an acronym nobody knows. It's a conversation starter.
Well, the thing is, the Make Americans Financially Independent will be on the side of the hat, so people will know exactly what it means.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, I'll have my bootleg version with the little A filled in. So, all right. Thanks a million, Murray. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.